In this video, I'll uncover 7 things that you should never do when intermittent fasting because it can stop you from getting great results. Intermittent fasting is an incredible health strategy when done correctly. And the truth is, a lot of people tell me their story about intermittent fasting and what they're doing, and I find little things throughout their intermittent fasting strategy that is messing them up. In some cases, they're still getting results, but they could be getting better results if they made these very simple tweaks. So what we're going to talk about in this video is 7 things you should never do when intermittent fasting, the top 7 things that I see people mess up through this whole process. And I'm also going to tell you how I do intermittent fasting week after week. So stick around to the end of this video. But before we get started, I'm Dr. Zarowski and welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, it's a pleasure to have you here. Be sure to hit the notification bell, join the notification community, and I'm going to help you excel your health and your life. Let's go ahead and jump into the first big thing I see people make a mistake with, and that's caloric confusion, as I refer to it. Basically, what this means is that people aren't doing the right calorie consumption. They don't have the proper calorie consumption. Now, this is something that's pretty interesting because if you're someone who was like me, you grew up eating 3 meals a day as a child into your young adulthood, and then you switch to maybe 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day, it's very mind twisting and mind bending to really figure out how much you should be eating. So if you grew up like I did, then you kind of develop a set point and you know, like, hey, I need to not eat this much, otherwise I'll start gaining weight, and I need to at least eat this much, otherwise, I'm not going to feel very well. You develop this innate set point. But when you go from 3 meals a day to 2 meals a day, all of a sudden your portions look like they're a little bit bigger maybe, or maybe they look like they're too small. And then even if you go from 2 meals a day to 1 meal a day, it gets really twisted and it gets really hard to understand what's happening. And then let's say maybe you throw exercise into the mix and then all of a sudden you need more calories. And so you may be doing 1 meal a day and you're going and you're looking at your plate going, oh my gosh, that is way too much food. I shouldn't possibly be eating this much. And remember, with intermittent fasting, the goal isn't to calorie restrict. The goal is actually to maintain proper caloric intake. And so you may look at that and go, that's way too much food. Or you may look at it and say it's not enough. So with all this mind bending going on, one of the things I always recommend is I recommend that you learn to count the amount of calories you're consuming throughout the day. And even if you have done this at some point in your past and you have a good understanding of it, when you switch to 2 meals a day or 1 meal a day, you still should do another check and make sure that you're falling into the proper caloric intake. You don't want to be having too much because otherwise, let's say you're trying to do intermittent fasting to lose weight and then you're not losing weight because you're eating too much, because that happens a lot. You're fasting all the time, and then all of a sudden you start eating and you start overeating. So we want to make sure that we're getting proper caloric intake, because we also don't want to fall into the trap of, like I said, you look at that big meal at 1 meal a day and you go, I shouldn't possibly be eating that much, especially if I want to lose weight. And then what happens from there is you start crashing your metabolism because you're getting too few calories. And if you're someone who's maybe using intermittent fasting or 1 meal a day as a way to burn fat but spare muscle because you're trying to put on some good lean muscle mass, then you're not going to be able to put that muscle on if you are not getting proper calories. So always check your calories, make sure that that's spot on, because this is a big problem for a lot of people. And if you get this right, the results that you will get from intermittent fasting, whatever your goals may be, will be much better. Let's talk about not drinking enough water. Now, I'm going to tell you what, this happens to me all the time, because when you're not eating, a lot of times you just forget to drink water. For me, I'm in the clinic, I'm working with patients, I'm going from room to room, and I'm busy and moving fast. And all of a sudden I look back 3-4 hours and I'm like, I didn't drink any water. And I typically notice when I start to not feel too good, I'm getting a little bit of a headache, whatever it is. And so when doing intermittent fasting, especially 1 meal a day, a big problem for me, especially with 1 meal a day, you have to make sure that you are drinking water throughout the day. Because when you eat, you kind of have a natural tendency to want to drink some water. But when you're not eating, it just doesn't happen as much. So be careful with this one. Make sure you're drinking the proper amount of water. And the other kind of conversation that goes with this is that you want to make sure you're getting proper electrolyte consumption as well. Sometimes when intermittent fasting, what I'll do is I'll sprinkle a little bit of salt in my water. I'll take a little crystal of the sea salt and just put it in my mouth and suck on it. But we want to make sure that with proper hydration, we're also getting proper electrolytes, because it makes you feel so much better. And if you're not getting proper electrolytes or proper hydration, the whole fast is going to be a rocky road. I mean, you're just not going to feel well, especially with the electrolyte problem. So make sure that you're doing that in order to get good results. Let me know if you fall into this trap of not drinking enough water in the comments below. Next on our list is going to be Medication. I get a lot of questions around medication when doing intermittent fasting, and this is a problem for a lot of people because so many people are on medication. And in the past, I had told people, well, if you have a problem like type 2 diabetes, you shouldn't just be jumping in intermittent fasting. And a lot of people were like, well, no, intermittent fasting is great for type 2 diabetes. Well, it is, but let's assume that the type 2 diabetic or the person with high blood pressure or the person who has these different health concerns is on medication. And that's what I would always assume if you have these issues. So let's say the person's on medication, and if you're on medication, you should work with your doctor before jumping into an intermittent fasting routine. Let's just talk about the type 2 diabetic. If the type 2 diabetic is on some sort of medication in order to drive down their blood sugar, what will happen if they're doing intermittent fasting, 1 meal a day, and taking their medication? Well, they will drop their blood sugar to the point maybe they're passing out, to the point where it's dangerous. I mean, imagine somebody's driving down the road and they decide to embark on 1 meal a day because they read something about it on the internet and how good it is for type 2 diabetics, and then they're taking their medication and then they pass out. Like, it could be very dangerous. So we always have to look at all the people who are falling into these categories and understand that if you're on medication, you need to work with your doctor on it because there could be some complications with it, and it's just the safe thing to do. So with medications, talk to your doctor. The wrong fasting method. I think this is important too, because a lot of people who do intermittent fasting are very much influenced by their social circle, whether it be their family, whether it be their friends, whatever it is. And so as you're influenced by your social circle, you tend to jump into whatever fasting method they're doing. Maybe they're doing 1 meal a day. Maybe they're doing 16 and 8 intermittent fasting. Whatever that is, you tend to do what they're doing. And unfortunately, sometimes that is not the right method for you. And sometimes there's even peer pressure, like, oh, you got to do 1 meal a day because that is the best way to do it. That's how you get the best results. But it still may not be right for you. So make sure that when you're doing intermittent fasting, you're using the right method for you, not just the right method. There's no such thing. If you're 16 and 8, 1 meal a day, I mean, they're both great. Make sure that you're using the right one for you. Now, for me, I like to alternate back and forth. Naturally, the days that 16 and 8 works out well for me, I do 16 and 8. Naturally, the days that I just fall into this 1 meal a day category where it's like I'm moving all day, I'm busy, my mind's busy, I do 1 meal a day simply because it fits my schedule better. Now, I like to do both, and I like to sprinkle both in. So I let them naturally just happen. And some days it's kind of a sliding scale. It's like, well, I was going to eat lunch and do 2 meals today, do the 16 and 8, but it's just going to work out better for me if I do 1 meal a day. Let me know in the comments what strategy you're using and how you came about deciding which one is right for you, because I think that's very insightful. Now let's go ahead and talk about the next thing here, and excessive stress. I'm big on this one because as someone who has been under excessive stress before and trying to do intermittent fasting, I kind of understand all the different things that can go wrong. And I also see different patients who are under excessive stress who try to utilize intermittent fasting and they just keep crashing and struggling with it. Excessive stress, what would be an example of that? Somebody who's not sleeping well at night, maybe you just had a new baby. Someone who is working a very physical job, maybe you're doing construction all day. Someone who is going and having maybe some financial stress, maybe somebody who has some emotional stress with their relationship, somebody who is truly under a lot of stress. And when you're under a lot of stress, intermittent fasting, you can kind of go off the rails in so many directions with it. You can have problems with chronic fatigue when doing intermittent fasting. You can have adrenal dysfunction. You can have problems where you're just like binge eating. I mean, you can have a lot of things that come up. And let's say you top that off with a health condition, because most people are suffering from one or more health conditions. So top all that off with a health condition, because that's considered physiological stress as well. And then you add in physiological stress through fasting. It's very difficult to move forward in a successful way. Now, understand this. Like I said, many people are suffering from a health condition. So what I find is that 16 and 8 typically works very well for most people, regardless of the situation. But 1 meal a day is where you start putting too much stress on. And that excessive stress causes people to not actually get good results. And in some cases, get a little bit of bad results. And like I said, a lot of people just keep stacking the stress on and, they're doing excessive exercise, whatever it is. Just be careful. And it's usually not one stressor. It's a whole compilation of stressors that cause people to have issues. Let's talk about what can I have? Okay, this is another big thing that is one of those things I see so many people focus on. Well, if I'm doing intermittent fasting, what can I have? Oh, I'm going to put a little creamer in my coffee, maybe a little bit more creamer in my coffee because it tastes better that way. I'm going to put some xylitol in and some stevia stevia because I like it like that. So many people just go and they keep adding in all these little things. Oh, stevia candies, xylitol candies, xylitol gum, so a lot of people ask, what can I have? What can I have? What I really get people to focus on is just doing a good pure fast. What do I consider a good pure fast? Just drinking water. And that's what I do, because I have fallen into that trap. Let me know in the comment section below if you've fallen into that trap. But if you fall into that trap, it's like, well, I'll have some apple cider vinegar and I'm going to put all this stuff in it. I like having plain apple cider vinegar with water when fasting, but I stay away from putting all the little things in it in most cases, just because I like to try to do the purest fast possible. And so be sure to make sure that you're focusing on doing a good pure fast and not trying to add in all the little things because they may be messing up your fast. Now, of course, let's talk about this a little bit further because there's always situations. For instance, one person asked me, he said, well, I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm doing one meal a day and I work out first thing in the morning and I don't have my one meal a day at night. And then I'm trying to build muscle. And so he's asking, can I have pre-workout and can I take essential amino acids? And I was like, in that case, I would. Personally, I would actually do that. Now, do essential amino acids break your fast? Absolutely. Will the pre-workout break your fast? It can. There's some that won't, some that will. And so it's really just a judgment call on your part. Now, in his situation, if I were in that situation, if I'm trying to put on muscle, I would want to give my body the proper building blocks to build that muscle and not just fast all day long. It's going to be difficult to work out like that and build a lot of muscle. So I would do that personally, and I wouldn't really care that much about breaking my fast with the essential amino acids. Now, it's all about judgment call. Make those judgment calls for you. If having that coffee with a little bit of creamer in it allows you to actually do the fast and not fail at it because you just find you can't enjoy yourself at all and you don't like it, then, just do the coffee with the creamer in it because something is better than nothing. Make those judgment calls, make it sustainable for you, but still always try to do a good pure fast. Let's go ahead and talk about taking supplements. A lot of people ask me this question. Should I take my supplements while doing intermittent fasting? And the answer is yes and no, okay? Now, the no is you shouldn't, in general, you just shouldn't take it. Like if you just have the ability to take your daily vitamins throughout the entire day, don't focus on taking them when doing intermittent fasting. In many cases, it'll even make you not feel too hot. You can take some of these different minerals that will sit in your stomach like a rock. They make you feel like you want to puke. In general, do not take supplementation when doing intermittent fasting. And I don't typically like to take anything that's going to alter physiology when intermittent fasting either. And you have to think of it this way too. If you're taking supplements, you're kick-starting your digestion and then you're kind of like messing with fasting a little bit. Now, in general, like I said, don't do supplements. Now, there's always some different caveats to this rule. And the truth is I work with a lot of people with health conditions, okay? A lot of times I'm working with people with gut conditions, taking some of these different gut formulas that are helping to decrease inflammation and improve gut health are best taken on an empty stomach. So we still do that. Sometimes people who are under excessive stress, we still do adaptogens like rhodiola, ginseng, some of these different adaptogenic herbs. Now, we also even do B vitamins sometimes because people are under excessive amounts of stress or they're suffering from a health condition. And so if you have some sort of health condition, there may be good reason that you want to if you're working through something and it's still highly, highly beneficial. Now, for someone who is just, your general average person, let's say you're good and healthy, don't try to take your supplementation on an empty stomach, first thing in the morning in a fasted state. It's not the best thing to do. So be sure to put in the comment section if or when you take your supplements. I'd love to know. And then also give this video a thumbs up. Share with me in the comment section below some of the mistakes you've made with intermittent fasting and how you've overcome them. And also be sure to check out this video that's going to teach you some of the latest science on intermittent fasting when it comes to disease and longevity. It's awesome. For these people who have really bad cholesterol scores and triglyceride scores and inflammation in the heart, utilizing fasting is very powerful for going and basically reversing that and bringing it down to a good homeostatic balance.